Good morning, everyone. This is Sean Matthew Brown, and this is Urban Disruptors Weekly Wrap-Up. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun. Okay, I really can't afford a theme song, so I write one myself. So much news to cover. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in. I'm on time this morning at 10 o'clock. If you are watching this live, it's greatly appreciated. I just ask that whether you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, please just share it. Please just share it. Hit the share button or send a watch party. I'm going to do the same thing right now, as I always do. If you watched this before, we're going to cover some news. We're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to do a few things. We're going to figure some stuff out. We're going to have some conversations. We're going to have some fun. We're going to be sad. We're going to learn and all that good stuff. So please tune in and let your mama, your papa, your daughter, and your son know that this is on. We're going to go over some news. I'm going to let you know how you can get some money for things, how to get a job. We're going to cover a whole bunch of stuff this morning. A whole bunch of stuff we're going to cover, as usual. So thank you so much for tuning in. It should be a fantastic time. So if you're watching this, please share it. We're back in the studio. Last week we were at El Burger Bar in East Camden, where we talked about the delicious food that they make and how to support businesses. And here we are back in the WCMD studio. Somebody give me an angry face already. What'd I do? Here we are at the WCMD studio at Dare Academy in the beautiful neighborhood of Parkside. I don't know if it's me tripping or what, but I just like not. So I'm not able to sometimes share this, so I want to share it. We have a special guest this morning. Atnreakn, Alleyne. I will give him a proper introduction later, in a few minutes after I go over the news. So let me get right started with this and going over the news. All right. Reported by Stephen Rodas in Tap Into, Camden's Cooper Hospital, among 6 hospitals shipped coronavirus vaccines. Virtual also prepares. Anthony Mazzarelli, and the CEO of Cooper, an old friend of mine, was on CNN talking about the same thing. In short, there is a vaccine for coronavirus. There are 3 different companies that have made 3 different types of vaccines, all of which have shown to be effective for over 90% of the people who took it in the trial run. And Cooper has some of those, and as they figure out who will get it first and the way that people will get the vaccine. Are you going to take the vaccine? When do you think you'll take the vaccine? Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the vaccine, because I'm predicting that as coronavirus reaches its peak, which is expected to be at its peak in the 2nd or 3rd week of January, that more and more people will be discussing not only the virus, the sickness, the deaths, but also the vaccine itself. So in the comments, let me know what you think about that vaccine and if you have anything that you want to share. Next, another article written by Stephen Rodas and Tap Into, lack of Camden warming centers means some homeless have to make do on cold nights. So it's obviously cold outside right now, and unfortunately, we have people who are sleeping outside without a place to go. There are obviously people who without a place to go. This is bad. This is sad. As you can see, you can't see this, but this is a good article that I recommend you read. Pastor Amir Khan, who is a potential candidate for mayor, the former candidate for mayor, has posted about this on his social media page. He has a press conference today at 1. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know a huge amount about this issue, but what I do know is this. Camden is in a dilemma and has been in a dilemma for years when it comes to the homeless population. Because the Board of Social Services is in Camden, the Transportation Center is in Camden, and drug dealers are in Camden, and abandoned properties are in Camden. It's kind of like the stars are lined up for homeless people from the region to be attracted to coming to Camden as they do. I've interviewed some of these people before. They come from Belmar, Gloucester City, Cherry Hill, the surrounding suburbs, because the heroin is good. It's laced with a little bit of fentanyl, but it doesn't kill them just yet. This is what they say. We have Joseph's House. We have a few shelters in the city. We have buildings that have been used as warming stations, but coronavirus has made this more difficult. But it seems like the freeholders and the city government, the freeholders knocked down a building off of Atlantic Avenue, 6th and Atlantic last year, not far from where they had the tent city. It seems like we don't know what to do with this population of people, and there's no policy associated with it. There's not necessarily enough funding for homeless housing and shelters. And I can see Mayor Moran being like, we're not going to be the hub for South Jersey's homeless people. So whatever we got to do to make Camden less attractive, we're going to do. I can hear that argument. And then the other side of that is these are people in our community anyway. And if they don't have a warm shelter, they're going to have to sleep anywhere, which is outside, and they can die. They can get sick. They can spread disease to other people. We have to be humane in how we treat people. So I do think it's a dilemma. What I do wish happened that has, as far as I know, hasn't happened is there to be a true conversation with the providers, the churches, faith-based community, government, to figure out what we can do to make sure we balance humanity and protecting our city as well. Next story. There's a new hotel that has opened up in Camden, down at the waterfront. They are hiring. They've hired Camden residents. The mayor was there earlier this week with a few other folks with the ribbon cutting. Has 180 rooms in the hotel. It's the Hilton Garden Inn. There have been a lot of jokes that people have made about this being the place for what's the term? Is it jump offs? Mistresses, maybe. So, if you have a jump off for mistress, then there's a hotel for you. Just kidding. They put the hoe in hotel. Okay. I can feel no one laughing. All right. Next article. Time running out to apply for Camden County rental assistance. I talked about this on the show. If you are a tenant and you do not receive government assistance and you're behind on your rent because of economic conditions, because of COVID-19, you can apply for your rent to be paid with this grant from Camden County. The money does not go to you as a tenant to pay your rent. The money goes directly to your landlord. You apply. You have to submit your lease, answer basic financial information as you would for applying for anything else, where there's cash assistance. And then you put your landlord's information in. They then contact your landlord. Your landlord submits his or her information about you as a tenant. And you should talk to your landlord about this before you submit, so that he or she is aware. And then a caseworker will contact you to verify the documents, to tell you if you need anything else, and then eventually the money will go to your landlord. The deadline is in 3 days, December 8th. If you are a tenant and you have a legitimate lease with your landlord, if you have a lease, I strongly encourage you to apply for this program. They have over $1 million left in the program. $1 million left. So I recommend you apply for the program. Okay. Some more news. In the education world, we saw that the superintendent, Katrina McCombs, who's been a guest on the show before, presented to the State Board of Education. And when she's presented to the State Board of Education, she mentioned that at a certain date, on average, 25% of students are not taking remote learning, are not participating in remote learning. Um, we are in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of an education crisis in many ways. And I'm gonna read a little bit to you in a moment. About 25% of kids in this New Jersey school district are ditching remote learning every day, superintendent says. So this is an article that I'll put this in the comments. This is an article in NJ.com. There it is in the comments, so you can see it. Yeah, when I talk to our guest today, I'm gonna dig a little bit more into some of the issues that are going on with education. What I can say for now about this though is something simple. If you are, as a parent, please do whatever you can to make sure that your children are participating. I'm a parent too, and although their mom Keisha is with them way more in the morning than I am, I know it's tough to get your kids up in the morning sometimes, and to keep them motivated and sitting in front of that digital tablet or laptop and participating with classmates they may have never met, a teacher they may have never seen before, with learning something they may not find as important at the moment. But it's important that we demonstrate a culture of believing that education is valuable, that it's important, and that we do whatever we can, to support the education of our young people. It may be annoying, it may be tough, but that's the way it is. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about before bringing on our guest is a power list. So there are a few power lists. There are a few power lists that have been circulating. There are a few power lists that have been circulating. The one that I'm going to talk about is the one that I made just a few days ago. I did a power list. I put a power list up on Facebook, and in my power list, talk about who are the most powerful people in Camden, and I want to talk about that just for a moment and let y'all know who the powerful folks are. So if you haven't read it, in NJ Monthly, there is an article where George Norcross is interviewed. George Norcross is the chairman of Cooper Hospital, and he is also the president of Connor Strong Buckaloo, which is an insurance brokerage firm. I am quoted in the same magazine story that they did on Camden, but George Norcross got his own interview. George Norcross is the most powerful person when it comes to Camden politics. This is pretty much indisputable. Although the idea of it might make a few people uncomfortable. I just put the link in there. In this article, he talks about why he likes Camden. He talks about some of the attacks that he's had for his companies that he's affiliated with receiving tax incentives. I forgot to mention when I said what he does. He's also a co-owner of Haltech, which is a $1 billion nuclear reaction creation facility. I do want to read a portion of this article. So it says, this is the reporter, some critics fear Camden Rising initiatives will lead to gentrification and loss of the city's identity. Are such fears justified? And here's his answer. Real estate in most parts of the city has become very expensive. Those I know who live in the city are ecstatic that they've recovered the value of what they put into their homes. The big difference between what we've done and what others have done is that we've done this from the neighborhood's perspective. So the neighborhoods are the priority at the moment, not Center City or, or downtown. I'm sorry, I was trying to read this without laughing. Look, Mr. Norcross, I don't know who you're talking to, but sadly, because it's really not funny, that's just not true. That's just not true. Go to Fairview. Go to South Camden a little bit. All right. Go to Centerville. Centerville, yes, but that's because they knocked down the old affordable low income housing and built new income housing. Morgan Village, no new development. All of East Camden, there's nothing remarkable except for a house here or there. Go over to Whitman Park, absolutely not. Uh, Parkside, yes, because they have a strong community development corporation. So if you go neighborhood by neighborhood, where are these incentives that you're referring to? Um, I don't know what he's talking about. So when you think about power and who's on the list and who's number one, it's very important. A few things are important here. One thing that's important is that there are good things that our government has done. Council, the mayors, the last few mayors, freeholders, state government, our legislators have supported and done good things in Camden for the people of Camden and for poor people in general in New Jersey. If you look at some of the things that the legislature has passed, the grant that I just talked about that the freeholders have done, I wish people stuck to the true good that has been done so that we can live in reality and identifying the things that need to still get fixed. I almost famously in June drove around Camden and I wanted people to see like what it looks like. There's a reason why we have hundreds and hundreds of homeless people in this city. It's because of the amount of abandoned properties. Let me read the next paragraph of this. When you're working, this is George Norcross. When you're working in the neighborhoods like we are, block by block, making sure that clean water is in place, that parents have a good school that's safe and that you're proud of, making sure that you have a great youth athletic program year round, all these things matter. All right. And some of those things I agree with, right? So there's a good athletic program. Um, um, the majority of schools I would definitely describe as being safe places. Next sentence. We want to give the people who live here and who have gone through this a helping hand and hope they remain as great citizens of the city. There's enthusiasm here. The arrow is pointing up. There is some enthusiasm here. The arrow may be pointing up, but I want to be super duper clear here that we need better housing policy in Camden. There's several strategies that can be used to do this. One of those strategies is to empower our residents to understand the process of home ownership. This could be a homeowner that wants to just buy the house that's right next door to him or the lot that's right next door. This could be a person who's never owned a home and has always rented, but might make $40,000, $50,000 a year and can do that. Anyway, I recommend that you read the article, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the power list before bringing on before I guess the other four people. And I'm doing this from memory. Let's see how I can do here. Number 2 is Chris Calori. He is the executive director of Cooper's Ferry Partnership. Let me be very clear that just as I've talked to George Norcross before, I talk to Chris Calori every once in a while, and Chris is a good listener. He's almost like a super project manager because Cooper's Ferry manages projects. Connect the lots. They do some street studies and neighborhood development studies. They fill the gap for what our city government doesn't have the capacity to do. Cooper's Ferry does much of that. They started off as an organization focused on waterfront development and then transitioned and went beyond that. I think Chris has power, and Susan, who's number 3, is on the board, co-chair of the board along with the mayor. Chris has power, but the power that Chris in that organization has is because of an absence of competent, effective leadership in our city government. At least that's my standing theory. The third person on the list is Susan Bass-Levin. Susan Bass-Levin is the former mayor of Cherry Hill. She was mayor for 14 years at Cherry Hill. She was also the treasurer of John Corzine's campaign when he ran for governor. She was the commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs, a statewide level institution that manages things related to local municipal governments. She, for a short period of time, worked at the New York Port Authority, which is a nice job to have. And George Norcross, as chairman of Cooper Hospital, recruited her to be the president of the Cooper Foundation, which at first just donated to things related to Cooper Hospital, but then they expanded that and putting money and grants to nonprofit organizations in Camden, including many of the organizations that I love and support. She retired not too long ago, but Susan is kind of like a go-to person. There have been times that when I was on the school board or in whatever position that I reached out to certain politicians, and Susan was there to give me a call. She is a smart and sharp lady. She understands, I think, people politics and party politics, and what can be controlled and what can't be controlled. A lot of the elected officials listen to her advice, to her feedback. Um, so there's that. Number 4 on the list is Governor. Uh, I'm beginning to say this out of slightly out of order. Governor Phil Murphy. Most of the money that comes to the city of Camden does not come from Camden taxpayers. It comes from the state of New Jersey. So any governor is going to have influence in that. Governor Murphy hasn't necessarily been able to penetrate through or above George Norcross. They had a feud. They kind of have gotten past that now. But any governor is going to be on the list, including Governor Murphy. He does not have the same hands-on approach that Chris Christie or John Corzine or Jim McGreevey did. He's a little bit hands off. I think he's made some relationships in Camden that I question, and that the relationships that he had do not necessarily result in great public policy for our people. But Murphy has a role to play. I know some of his staff, and I encourage them to I encourage you, especially you NLCers, to reach out to me and talk to me about Camden. You don't do that enough, but because I'm not going to steer in the wrong direction. But Murphy has some power, and then our mayor, Frank Moran. Frank Moran has power because he's the mayor. He gets to appoint people. He gets to hire people. He gets to set the tone. He's the spokesman for the city. But I think it should be very telling to you that basically, George Norcross does live in Camden now, but, basically you got white suburbanites that have more power than our own elected leadership. And I think what's sad about that is the level of acceptance that some of our elected leaders have in accepting this hierarchy where it's not the way it's supposed to work. There's a committee structure. There is a hierarchy and structure that should exist, and there's what actually happens. And what actually happens is probably good for these people in their own personal professional endeavors. But as I read in that article, I just don't see how a lot of these relationships are making our neighborhoods safer or better in many ways. They hit the nail on the head on a few areas, but there are a whole bunch of nails that are still sticking up that are ready to be banged in to get us to the next level in terms of reducing poverty, building wealth in our community, building a level of ownership, dealing with our environmental issues, making sure that the superintendent and of all the school leaders of all schools are supported by a community that supports a culture of learning. Like issue after issue is pretty much unaddressed. Gang violence, addiction. I mean, I could just keep going, and I just don't see enough happening from any of these people on this list. I don't see enough. So that's that. Let me get into. Atnreakn, you're almost up, so you're a little too close to the camera there, brother. You gotta there you go. Okay. Oh, we got some comments. Let's see here. Wait, is somebody commenting as me on? Somebody's commenting. Co-administrator. This is a tip to you. Somebody is commenting as me. It looks like from Urban Disruptors Weekly Wrap Up. That's odd. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, some comments before I bring you on, Atnreakn. Felix Moliere, frequent viewer, says East Camden has more than just 1 or 2 homes. The concentration of homeless in our city has to do with the opioid epidemic and accessibility of social services, which are readily available in Camden. Agreed. Patrick Duff, Cooper's Ferry did a great job with MLK House. Not. Okay, Patrick, that's like a joke from like 20 years ago, the whole not thing, but I understand your point. They lied and committed fraud against an elderly Camden woman. I know Cooper's Ferry tells the story a little bit differently, Patrick. I'm not saying you're wrong. I know that's your perspective. The fact is, Martin Luther King did live in Camden. I believe it's 739 Walnut, if I get that right. I don't know whatever happened with that house, but I hope they do something amazing with it. All right, let me bring on our guest. Hey, let's do a little. Can you hear me, sir? Oh, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
All right, I'm good.
Fantastic. All right. Atnreakn, you are the co-founder and CEO of Teen Sharp, an organization that prepares Students of Color for Top Colleges and Leadership. You are also the founder and led an education advocacy organization, Delaware CAN, the Delaware Campaign for Achievement Now. Prior to launching that, you were the director of talent management at the Delaware Department of Education. You're an alumnus of Pahara Next Gen Fellowship and the Strategic Data Project at Harvard. He's also a founding member of the 4.0 Angel Syndicate, a community of Black philanthropists co-investing in early stage education ventures. Oh, Andre, got some money for me? We should talk about that offline. Andre is the proud husband of Tatiana and father of Zuriana, Naz, and Zahar.
Yeah. Taras.
Huh?
Taras.
Okay. Well, I don't have that accent. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you did not mention in your bio that I'm going to mention because you're from here we go. There's a link to your blog. There are a few things you didn't mention that I want to mention. So, Andre, you are a bass player, and tell me when I get it wrong. You are a bass player, a minister, yes. A poet, a former landscaper. You're also a dissertation away from your PhD. We're both blue hens, which I'll ask a question about. And what, I feel like I'm skipping something. Oh, you rap. I've heard you rap a few times.
Yep.
And you went to high school in Accra, Ghana.
Yes.
All right, there we go. So super interesting guy. Known him for a long time. All right, let me get into it.
And I lived in Camden.
And yes, and yes, you did. I remember that. Not too far from the street from me. Or what I would say is probably the nicest street in Camden in many ways, Chambers. Okay, all right, good to see you virtually.
Yep, good seeing you as well.
I see you have your Black activist hairdo on. That's good. All right, Andre. So much is going on in our community. You have lived, you lived in Camden. You went to Rutgers. You're familiar with what goes on in Camden. Camden it's sometimes a very interesting place to look at in terms of education and what's going on. As you may have read or may be aware of, the district right now is going through a process of closing certain schools. They hired a clerk that's going through that process. There will be less schools next school year than there are this school year. Much of that is because parents have chosen to send their children to the Renaissance schools or charter schools, including KIPP, Mastery, and Uncommon. With all that said, you work with schools all over Delaware. What are your thoughts on what's going on here?
Well, first, thank you for having me on the show, Sean. So we go really way back, and excited to be a guest on. I think the one thing that I'll preface is I have experience in education. I worked in Delaware. Teen Sharp, works at Rutgers Camden as well, where we serve students all throughout New Jersey. But I'm not a local Camden education expert. So I want to give a respect to the local context that I may not know. But some of these things are patterns, right, that you see in cities where I live right now in Wilmington. And so, I've done some reading about what's going on, particularly with the plan for school closures. And I think these things are really challenging and complicated. I read what Keith Benson wrote, about what needs to happen as well from his standpoint. And I think it's a mix. I think one of the challenges is that I'm a big believer in that we need to make sure that parents, we can't protect institutions, right? We need to make sure that parents have what they need for their children. They have great schools for their children. And so, but I think that a lot of the ways, and so that has happened in many ways with what you said, right? Some of the parents have voted with their feet and gone to different places. But a lot of the way that this has been done in communities like Wilmington and Camden has caused a lot of harm that needs to be recognized, right? It needs to be recognized, and it needs to be rectified. Like what are other ways to do it versus closing schools that have been have historic presence in certain communities, that making parents have during a pandemic a particularly challenging experience trying to get their kids to school. I mean, so from what I've read on this particular issue, it feels like there's still there's still a lot of community engagement that needs to happen. I don't know, from your experience, how that, like, the quality of the community engagement. I know typically that's not. When I was at Department of Ed, full disclosure, there was a plan to close schools in Wilmington. That wasn't something that I was leading, but I worked in the department, and I know that we didn't do anywhere near enough of engaging the community to hear about what the impact would be. Make sure that what we consider all the alternatives, right? And so I think that is something, without knowing all the context, but reading what Keith wrote, reading the articles about it, it just seems like there's this, especially during this moment of a pandemic, adding any more upheaval to a system, understanding financial issues and so forth seems, pretty problematic.
So let me just push back on that a little
Sure.
bit. When I look at some of these schools that could possibly close, I see that their math, ELA, which is English language arts, their math, ELA, and writing numbers are sometimes in the single digits or in the teens in terms of how many students pass the test with a level of proficiency. As a, I'm a former school board member. I got a degree. I got 2 degrees. I'm super educated. I look at this data and I'm like, I'm not sending my child to a school that's performing low. Even if it's right down the street.
Yeah.
So, what do you say to, like, I hear people criticize Mastery Kit and Uncommon. I get an earful of Mastery, especially from time to time, on some things they have going on that may not be working as good as they can. But at the end of the day, they're on paper, their scores are just better. And so what do you say to? Oh, hey Tatiana. What do you say to the parent that? What do you say to the parent that is looking at this data and is just trying to make the best choice for their child? So they send them to a Renaissance school, but the more parents do that, then the less money there is for district schools. And year after year, we'll see less and less money, meaning eventually more and more closures to an unrecognizable and small district.
Yeah, I listen. First and foremost, like I said at the beginning, we need to make sure parents have great quality, right? Every year lost, right, is we have kids, right? You're not having that for your kid. You can't have a lost year, and so I get the urgency of making sure what the option that is there for them is the highest quality possible. But I think what happens in this discussion is, like the education reform versus, right, whatever, right, non-reform, like it gets so polarized. And doesn't understand there's nuance in it, right? Like, yes, we want to make sure that if a school has single digits, we have one, some of those in Wilmington as well, where they've been like that for years, right? And so, yes, close them, give different options, but there's a way to do, especially right now, like what are alternatives? That's what I would want to be looking at. What are alternatives? What else is how else can we do this in a way that's not so destructive? Because there's also whatever what you said also about families needing to get the best option for their kid. There's obviously I saw there was a petition that's been circulated, people also fighting for that school to stay, right? Because schools represent a lot more to communities, right? As well. So I'm not saying, like, my first and foremost priority is making sure a kid gets access to a great school. I do like this, when I read what Keith wrote, the plan that he wrote, I don't know if you want to get into that or not, but I do think that
I do want to get into it.
Yeah, I do think that there were some good ideas from me, because sometimes I see this and it's like, sometimes it seems like, what I liked about what I read was it wasn't just, this is a bad plan, right? Don't close the school. He really had some good ideas around what should the school be doing to improve, right? Because some of the idea of charters and choice and Renaissance was so that there was, that the district wasn't just sitting around watching people leave their district, right? That there was also a push to improve quality for schools. What you see in Washington, D.C., for example, is that the district schools and the charter schools, right? They've raised the bar collectively, and a few years ago, the district schools outperformed the charter schools as well. So I think that should happen.
Where was that?
Washington, D.C.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, right. So I think even in Delaware, for example, one of our school districts, Colonial School District, they were bleeding people right from the district to charters, and it made them kind of rethink how they designed the school. It is the largest high school in our state, but they kind of created a smaller school model within the big school, where they have focus on, they have different kind of almost like magnet school within a larger school, and that's allowed them to turn things around in terms of but ultimately, I don't think that a parent should be trapped, right? Like this is the one thing where I stand, the advocacy that I've done. I don't believe that parents and the kid, that they owe the district to give their kid to that district, right? And I think a lot of what's happened before there was choice in these schools was that you just had to, there could be, you're just stuck, right? And I don't think that's okay. But I also think the charter folks, like they need to be way more thoughtful about just like going into a community and just like bulldozing, right? So I think there's some nuance that needs to be explored.
The issue. So you said you asked if I want to get into it. And I'm just going to say a little bit about what Keith wrote. And if you don't mind, I'm going to be and I have the article up. I don't even know. Yeah, I guess I'll put this in the comments since I'm talking about it. But I do caution my audience: read this with a huge grain of salt. And I say that because, for one thing, he says the truth, and anybody that has to tell you that they're telling the truth or speaking in facts this many times, you should question, because the truth is the truth and facts are facts. With that said, I mean, are there some gems in here? There are a few, but what I actually am concerned with is the omissions. What isn't being discussed, and one of those things is one of the biggest differences. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to make this one point. Right now, the union and the district are in the middle of negotiations for the next contract. My understanding, and I could be wrong, someone correct me if I am, is that really the only thing that's hanging up is what the raise is going to be for the educators, how much the raise will be in the 3-year contract. One of the most significant differences between the teachers that teach at the Renaissance schools, some of the charter schools, and the district is the amount of professional development that they get. I'm not sure if a lot of people know this. A Renaissance school teacher gets more professional development in a month than a district teacher gets in an entire school year. So there's a correlation between student performance and the amount of time we're supporting our teachers. Now, let me give you an example, Andre. I don't know how you learn math, but I'm guessing it's the same way I learn math. When we do addition or subtraction, we carry, right? You have like a little number over the column second from the right, and you carry as you go right to left as you solve a math, doing simple mathematics. This is not the way Ethan and Evan do their math problems. They do grouping. It's a completely different way of getting to the same answer. In fact, as I understand it and look at them do the work, I would actually argue that it's a better way. And I understand why the tide has shifted on how we teach mathematics in elementary. But if I went to college 20 years ago and learned that other way, and now the textbooks and the curriculum are going this other way, I obviously need somebody to help me figure out how to do this myself, and then how to teach it. What are the techniques? What's the textbook say? What are the materials that support? And I'm getting to the weeds here, but this is what matters. Yeah. And so you have a union contract that does not allow for principals get to meet with their teachers 1 day a week in the district. I believe it's on Thursdays after school, and that's it. Teachers work for 185 school days, 185 days a year. Students are in school 180 days a year. So that's 5 days stretched out in 10 months for teachers to be present without students. It's just not enough time for these teachers to get the development that they need. So for all the stuff that Keith is saying, I wish that he concentrated on doing what he's supposed to do as the president, which is to make sure that a contract represents what's in the best interest of teachers and the best interest of students, and not in the best interest of a political argument about closures. Because again, although some of the points he makes may be fine, without they don't make sense within the structure that exists. We also don't pay Camden District also doesn't pay starting teachers enough. So if I don't care about teaching in what school, but I care about I just want to teach in Camden, and I don't care what school it is, I might make my decision on who pays me the most. Yeah. So what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I've been in the system at the table, with the union negotiating at the state level at least, and so I know that there's a side of the story. When I've done a lot of advocacy training for parents in Wilmington, across Delaware, for students as well, and I recognize that one of the things, to your point, right, you said the whole truth that is not talked about. The elephant in the room is that you have unions that have heavy thumb on the scales of decision making in the education system, and their contracts. We actually have our parents, read, see, collective bargaining agreements, look at that when we do trainings, because they don't realize that some of the things that are in there are not also. They do, I don't think when you said, his job is to protect teachers and students, I do think the argument that it's a trickle down, right? That whatever is good for teachers is good for students is not, that hasn't been my experience in the system.
Right.
Clearly you want teachers to feel supported, well paid. I'm all for that. But I've been at the table where you see that there has to be a choice, right? Right. And so it doesn't always work out the way that we might want to believe that, if you do something that's making a teacher feel their job is protected, that is going to be in the best interest of students. So that, to your point, that is something that is not addressed, and there are financial implications, right, about that I've seen, and then in general, like the flexibility. One of the things that's really needed when I think about what's needed to strengthen schools in urban areas, schools where there's has been historically low performance, you need flexibility. And we're seeing it if we get into the pandemic. We're seeing this during the pandemic, right? I did a report in Delaware, right? And in our case, our charter schools, they were able to, because of the flexibility, they were able to kind of respond in a different way than our other schools, which weren't teaching for like 6 weeks in the spring, and the other schools kind of just immediately kind of kicked on. So while I'm a believer in kind of making sure that there's protections for workers, there are places in education where with the kind of bureaucracy that comes along with some of these contracts, it really makes it hard to innovate. It makes it hard. And, so you saw in his piece, I do think some of the things he was talking about around the innovations that the district should think about are smart. But to your point, right, what's not also addressed is the ways that contracts can bog down innovation. So what you talked about PD being one of the reasons why some of the Renaissance schools are outperforming, but as a social entrepreneur, someone who's led, multiple nonprofits, I need that flexibility with my personnel. Right? I need that flexibility to make decisions without, having everything be, such, kind of a political trade-off, right? So that is something I think that certainly hamstrings certain schools.
I want to say something else real quick.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I thought your sound went off. So Brian Gregg, who is a now former educator, said the Renaissance schools have professional development by giving these students half day once each week. Has the district proposed that? I'm going to say that it's not like one. I think it's a good idea for that to happen, and then I'm going to make I'll read your second comment too, Brian. But that's something that has to be the teachers union has to agree with this for there to be that time for professional development. Your next point: teacher turnover is high at Renaissance schools for the same reasons you're offering them praise. How do you find balance, Brian? I think that's a great point. When in the short period of time our youngest son went to Uncommon, those teachers were excellent, but they looked tired. They looked really sleepy, and I think they were because of the amount of energy that it takes to keep up with that excellent curriculum Uncommon has. It's very taxing on the human body and on the mind. And look, my son was in the classroom, so I can see why they're tired. Evan makes me tired. And I'll say that, and I love Eric. Evan, I got something for you at the end of the show too. But absolutely. Let me, Brian, I think those are great points. Ira, we're still on question one, so let me get to question two.
Sure, let's go.
We got a few more. Parents continue to struggle to balance work and home, monitoring their children as they're doing remote learning. I'm assuming that you have this issue as well in your home, even though, of course, you and Tatiana are super parents. You're a parent and education advocate. What advice do you have for parents who are trying to balance working from home and making sure their children are engaged with learning at the same time?
Yeah, and that assumes parents have the ability to work from home. I think that's a privilege, right? I mean, some people still have to go in. A lot of people still have to go in, and they're on the front lines and they're putting themselves at risk, right? Uh, I've been having a lot of conversation about this. At Teen Sharp, we were out front early, because of our deep involvement in the education system, because of our networks around the country, telling our parents that when school districts were unclear about closing and how long they were closing, we told them to start planning for a year and a half. And they were like, "What do you mean a year and a half?" And we're like, "Listen, if you were going to go into a famine, what would you do?" And if you knew you were going to be, the question we asked in our parent workshops, if you knew you were going to be in this predicament for a year and a half, what would change about how you live your life, right? And so, I think, this is an impossible situation. You talk about me being super parent, but it's a hot mess, right? It's hard for people, and I have a lot of privileges, right? But it's hard for people to balance work at home, work away, whatever it is. Kids being at home, kids going in some days, some not. And so I think this is a case where we're showing that I believe our very individualistic and capitalistic society and mentality hurts us, and we have to go back to what I think is more of African and Afrocentric approach, where we have to like rely more on community. This is something that, since I believe it's going to be going on for a lot longer, what are ways that families, friendships, and communities can support each other, right? At Teen Sharp, we did a survey of our parents, a community survey, where we asked, we tried to make sure we connected parents, right? There might be parents that could form learning pods, right, together, or some other ways to support each other during learning. That is going to happen. You've got to find ways to, whether it's a grandma or auntie or whatever, right, moving in, like something's going to have to give, because this is otherwise going to hurt your child, hurt you as a family, create turmoil. I think we started a model that we're still kind of developing called Orchestrate, where we were having recent our alums that are in college, or recent graduates of college, basically serve as like virtual governesses of students virtually. So they would log on with a group of students throughout the day and guide them through the remote learning, check in with them, because remote learning doesn't work right at scale, right? It doesn't work in general when you look around. I mean, I'm not even talking about the younger kids, right? That's worse, right? Kindergarten, my daughter's 5. That's a mess. But when you talk about older kids, unless you have some crazy self-efficacy, most students they're going to fall through the cracks. If you're looking around, there was an article in Delaware, I'm sure you've seen that in Camden, where failure rates are going to be really high right now, which I think is also an abomination, that there's not the kind of grace during this moment. But you need to really have some help if you can't do it at home, you need some help to kind of guide your student to walk through their work with them, to check in on them. There's mental health component that we embedded into Orchestrate, because students are not doing well. Also, just with the emotional piece of this as well. So you need community, right? You need kind of structures that are going to keep your child on track. And then you're gonna have to we're gonna have to find ways to do out of school time to remediate, because so Teen Sharp right now, we're running classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday in math at nighttime that are parallel with really excellent teachers that are parallel to whatever they're learning in school, because we know math instruction is pretty terrible right now for what we've seen remote.
Okay. So just a few comments were made. Ben Sirocco says the charter and Renaissance staff should be unionized also. Unions provide fair working conditions and wages and fight for civil rights. They operate democratically as well. They're not perfect, but the alternative is unjust for teachers. So Ben, I don't know if you know this, but LEAP has a union. I'm gonna do a quick screen share here, Atnreakn, just for a moment.
Sure.
Atnreakn and I both have somewhat of a relationship with LEAP and the notorious leader, Dr. Gloria Bonilla Santiago. But here you can see just a vast amount of jobs that they're hiring for. And this gives you an indication of the amount of turnover that they have. This is a lot of jobs for a school to hire for. And I don't remember what site it's on, but there's another one. I'm gonna see if I can find it and bring it up, that show where you can you can rate, like you can write about it's right here. So on Indeed, you can rate the employer. They get a 2.8. So right here, you can see the reviews. And this is something I think if you're a parent, you want to know how happy your teachers are. So here you see terrible work culture. This is recent. The leadership issues started at board level. They don't question anything and don't provide any oversight. Mere puppets. The upper admin are overworked and very punitive. They lie and treat people poorly. These are educated people that are saying this. Pros, great kids. Cons, everything else. It only keeps going. Not a good place to work. The janitor seemed like his job, but anyway, don't waste your time. If you go to Indeed.com, and you can do this for any school, and you can get a sense of just like the happiness that people have. And again, Ben and everyone else, that's a y'all know I bring the receipts, right? So that's what the teachers themselves say. Yeah. All right. Let me go on with the next question. If you want to say something about that, feel free. But all right. Oh, okay. Here we go. So Atnreakn, you and I were both blue hens. With the great cockfighter of America. The blue hen was the best rooster fighting chicken. And then for some reason, the University of Delaware named themselves after that chicken, even though it was a rooster, that type of rooster was known as the blue hen. So we're blue hens, just as President-elect Joe Biden, just as former Governor Chris Christie, David Plouffe went there. Other political gurus have gone to University of Delaware and Newark, Delaware. So a few questions. First, you went there, I went there. University of Delaware is a very predominant. It's not only the majority white, it's super white. I remember walking in the courtyard, and these two people were walking ahead of me, and the girl says to the guy, I could tell they had just met in class and liked each other, and she says, "Is your family conservative?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, my whole family's conservative, absolutely." And then he's like, "What are you doing this weekend?" Like, "Oh, just going horseback riding." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm definitely not at Rutgers anymore." Didn't hear a lot of horseback riding at Rutgers. I love my conservatives. I love horseback riding. No insult to anyone that does that. It was just a difference that I noticed. With that said, you are an absolute expert. You and Tatiana are absolute experts in getting beautiful Black and brown children into colleges, including predominantly white institutions known as PWIs. What advice do you have for young people that will find themselves in predominantly white schools? Are there challenges? How do they adapt? What do you tell your young people?
Good question. I would say, well, just to make my plug, if you don't know about Teen Sharp, please look us up, www.teensharp.org. We started in New Jersey, where we have still our site at Rutgers Camden. Right now, we're all virtual, but we've been serving students in Brian. Shout out to Brian, who's worked with our students before, Brian Gregg. We're Brian you about to give a shout out to. Okay, yeah, Brian Gregg, that's cool. Okay. Brian Gregg is with it. And a lot of our students apply to HBCUs. Some have gone to HBCUs, but the bulk of them are going to top liberal arts colleges, top research institutions, and they're predominantly white. And so obviously it's a challenge that in some ways is a challenge that they're going to experience everywhere in the workforce. And what's important for us at the early level, right? So what we do in Teen Sharp that people don't know is our classes on Saturdays are taught predominantly by professors of color. The students on Saturdays are taking college level courses with us, and they're focusing on readings that are, Du Bois. They're reading, they're reading other scholars of color, and so that they also kind of get rooted in their history and their identity. So it's really important that when you're making that transition, because you can feel, you can get to these schools and start to feel imposter syndrome, right? You can start to feel like you're not good enough. You can start to try to morph yourself to fit. And so whether it's through a Teen Sharp or whatever else, like you've got to find a way to read up on your history, read up on the greatness of your people, so that you go with that kind of fire into those institutions, and because you're going to hear foolishness, right? Like you're going to hear it in the workforce too, right? And you got to be able to clap back, or sometimes not when you don't need
Can
to.
I tell you what I heard when I was at UD? I was in graduate school there. When I was at in a public administration program, urban affairs it was called, and so we're talking about cities or whatever. And this guy who was really nice, he's a lawyer now, really nice guy. I enjoyed being in classes with him. As we're sitting in Newark, Delaware, which I always describe as a bigger Merchantville, that's what it looked like to me, a bigger merchant university in the middle of it. This guy says he's from Delaware. He says, and this is the way he talked. He's like, Newark is the most urban city I've ever been to. And I'm like, what? and then I got a question I would get often in class was, is Camden like the Wire? Because I hear that like Baltimore and like their association with urban cities was the Wire. I got that a lot, and I'm like, yes it is. Yes. It's exactly like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild, Sean. And so you have to kind of equip yourself. You have to really get to know your identity. You have to get to like really start to appreciate your brilliance. You have to know your assets, right? Because we have a lot of students who are academically, because of everything we talked about, are not have academic gaps, right? Our students have academic gaps, but they don't come from a deficit mindset, right? Like, what are your assets that you're coming in with, and like feel amazing about those. So that's one part. The community, you still need community, and in these schools, no matter where you go, unless it's a really trashy institution, like they have certain, in the University of Delaware Center for Black Culture, right? They have other affinity groups that, fraternities, sororities, other places where you can find your kind of your community, and that's what you have to rely on for strength. And that's one of and professors and mentors that you can find that keep you. For me at Rutgers Camden, even though it's way more diverse, but it's still predominantly white. When I went to Rutgers Camden, D Muse, I spent a lot of time in D Muse's office. That was one of the places where, he just kind of, when I would go, I just feel affirmed, right? And he would give me great guidance. So
he saved my life in South Africa. I was trying to go to a South African strip club, and he talked me out of it.
You got the wildest stories. Anyway, so, yeah, you got the wild stories, and then have communities outside. So like our Teen Sharp alums, we have group chats. So we're still kind of strengthening each other, supporting each other. We bring our alums back for leadership summits. So like you've got to still find ways to keep yourself sharpened.
All right. A little bit of time left, and I have a few more questions. So this is my fault, not yours, but let's just try to have faster answers if you don't mind. Do you think Joe Biden would be good for public education in minority communities like Camden and Wilmington?
I think, well, when we think about the last 4 years, right, I think Biden's going to be substantially better, a breath of fresh air. I think Biden's going to, I think because of, you saw him bang the table, thanking the Black community, right? I do think that is not just posturing. I think about South Carolina and other places. I think there's an appreciation for more in the Democratic Party for Black community.
Biden loves the Blacks.
Yeah, I know. To say what we've done to save America. So I think there will be some, policies that are going to be really refreshing. And right now, specifically the pandemic, I think there's a lot of things that he's going to do around small businesses. Making sure that there's resources that we don't lose all these black small businesses. I think people looking forward to debt getting. Black graduates have a lot of student loan debt, so I think it'll be great. But I also just quickly note, Sean, that I'm a big believer of local organizing and advocacy, and I think sometimes we're waiting for Superman, right, or someone to do something, and we need local politics. What you do, right? We need to really build people at the local level, because the federal government's not going to save in the areas we need them to save.
Well, that brings me to that's a great transition to my next question is. You were an education advocate, but you also had a salary and the team that came along with that, a structure. Yeah. For those of us that are out here as parents, as community leaders that want to see change in our schools, what are some strategies or tips that you can recommend to people who want to see their schools or districts or charter or Renaissance schools or whatever it may be improve?
Yeah, I think I was doing it professionally, right? We had a budget, and as you said. But I think a lot of stuff we did weren't what didn't take cost a lot of money. Right? We started a parent boot camp. Like and we were training parents. We had 8-week training on education, advocacy, and I think those kind of programs. There's an organization that I mentioned I put in your comments last week on your show or the previous week. That Network Delaware is a good organization to look at from Delaware. They do not have a large budget. I think they raised maybe $70,000 last year or so, grassroots, they're doing deep organizing, and they managed through their organizing to really get a lot of people elected in our recent election. And so just like organizing 101, right? Like we need, but there needs to be some infrastructure, someone taking the lead. So I don't know who all those players are now in Camden, but really investing in the people development and training people about how to get involved on school boards, right? Training people on how to run for office, training people on how the process works. I'm really passionate about that, and I think that work. I mean, you see people talking about Stacey Abrams, right, in Georgia, like that kind of work that's longer term. That is what's going to when you start to have a movement of people that are now occupying those seats that have been traditionally handpicked. I think that's where you're going to see the most change.
Excellent. Then one last question, and then I'm going to switch gears. We'll be finishing about a few minutes, guest.
Sure.
So just going back to Teen Sharp for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So what should parents be thinking about right now about just in general? I mean, I know it depends on how old their child is or what grade.
Yeah.
What should parents be thinking about right now in terms of tuition, school choice, college choice, what credential matters, what the major that the child should have? What are your general thoughts on this?
Yeah, it really depends on the age, Sean. I think we and Tatiana actually has been Tatiana, our team has been working in Camden, doing some virtual workshops in Camden. So once again, if someone wants more direct help, check out teensharp.org. We also have a website, teensharp.org/college knowledge, where they can sign up and get support from us. But the school that your child goes to really, really matters. We started with that, right? It really matters, and you have to find a school that is challenging your child, supporting your child. The curriculum. Then you could be in school. You could be in a good school and getting a crappy curriculum. So we spend a lot of our time, too much of our time, fighting with schools, counselors, and others to make sure that our Black and Latino students are getting the highest quality courses. So the quality of courses that your child is getting matters a lot, especially at the high school level. That's something we talk about. Starting early. We used to have a middle school program in New Jersey at Rutgers Camden that we don't have anymore, but you can start college prep, very early, making sure your child is starting to build academic habits, right? Because we see a lot of our students fall off between middle school to high school, and similarly, right? All those transitions, elementary to middle to high.
Your sound like changed mid talk. Yeah, it just sounds a little muffled. But Atnreakn, do me a favor. Just I think I put this in the private chat, but the link that you had, the Teen Sharp link, could you add that in?
Okay, sure.
So I just want to thank Atnreakn, Alleyne. I love your. You just went away. Okay, that might be his internet connection. But anyway, Atnreakn, thank you so much for being a guest. Thank you for the friendship that we had for a long time, the debates and discussions that we've had, including me in things. And everybody, I want to end and doing the best job that I can to support my family. If you are on Instagram, I ask that you get your phone out right now and look at this food _show. Look at this food _show. I will put the link in the comments and take a look at my youngest son, Evan, does reviews of restaurants. As you can see, we like to eat. And so there's his Instagram. You can watch his videos and his food reviews. You can see his full personality. Thank you to his mom for helping set this up. Um, yeah, so look at this food. He's a food critic, and you can follow him on Instagram there. My children have had a dream, both have dreams of being YouTubers. Oh, look, here he is. Welcome back.
Yeah. Sorry.
But yeah, you can look at my son's Instagram. Look at this food. Atnreakn, let me say to your face, thank you so much for being a guest. Thank you for inviting me to your church, to your home for Thanksgivings. There's a story that I tell people. I'm going to say this publicly because I think this might help a few folks. Back in 12 years ago, 2008, when I started at Rutgers, at no fault of my own, financial aid messed up my money. I didn't get the money I was supposed to get, my refund check. I expected might have been $3,000 at the beginning of the semester. So I told my landlord I would pay my rent on time and have all this money and all this. And then I ended up meeting with the director the first or second day of school, and the money wasn't there. So when I tell you guys I had no money, and I was too embarrassed to tell my mom. Atnreakn lived around the street, and Tatiana, his wife, and Atnreakn fed me for I think a few weeks, which I was extremely grateful for. Or else I would have been pretty hungry because I didn't really want a lot of people to know what happened. But a lot of people are suffering like this right now, and no fault of their own because of systematic failures. They don't have anything to eat, and I think I've had a pretty bountiful life, but I did go through that one little period of being extremely food insecure. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had a friend that I trusted, I was willing to share this with, I don't know what I would have done. I guess I would have eventually told my mom or whatever, but I didn't want that judgment and stigma that would have come with admitting that I was broke, I didn't have anything. Andre, you've helped save me a few times. That was one of them. Oh, and the other thing I want to note that you did that you put in my life was when I was going to go to graduate school, I was just like, look, Rutgers is a 14-minute walk from my house on Berkeley Street. I went to undergrad here. I'm gonna go to graduate school here. And Atnreakn talked me out of it and said, you need to go to a higher ranked school in your academic field, which I did. I applied for University of Delaware. We went down there for a tour. I actually was going to move down there until I got appointed to the school board. But University of Delaware, in many ways, was an excellent school. Like the library alone was worth going to University of Delaware. Mm-hmm. The library was amazing. A lot of my classmates are doing amazing things today. Many years, several years later, I had a great network. It was good to get out of the state of New Jersey. It was good to get out of Camden. And this just goes to show the importance and value of friends that push us further, encourage us to live our biggest lives. So anyway, I just wanted to note that to you personally, that I appreciate the influence that you've had in my life. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. Before I go, how can we support your show? Is there like a Cash App, Venmo? How are viewers? You're putting a lot of great work, helping the community. How can we support you?
Oh, I love that question.
You need to pin your cash app in the comment.
Look, you got me nervous. Let me figure. I should have a better answer. Let me figure that out. I'll let you know. I'll get back to you on that. Look for an email or link. But look, Andre, I appreciate that. You gave me an opening to say a few things. One, WCMD Media is in a process of raising more money for new equipment and expanding. You guys will see the evidence of that week by week. I did do a fundraiser for my birthday, and some of that money went to just some of my personal expenses because I put it takes me time to prepare, either write the questions, either find the guests, either do the research, either read these news articles before it happens. But this show is going to play, I think, a critical role to the 2021 election for mayor and council. As our technology gets better and I'm able to get more help because of the coronavirus restrictions. When I started this show, this is always tough to say, but I started the show. I think the first episode was January 4th or 5th, and this was a few days after our friend Paul passed away. And I didn't think I was going to enter this with. I didn't think I was going to enter. I didn't realize that was going to happen, obviously. And it was really a devastating thing. And it was really even hard for me to even do the first episode because I was just thinking about our friend that we lost, Unipal too. But we got through it. And so this is fun, but it is complex because the next 2 hours after the show are going to be with me on the phone with people. People are going to send me text messages. And this happens throughout the week. So anyway, I'm giving you a really long answer, but I thank you for asking that. I will let you and everyone else know a way to support what's going on here. I do have food in my refrigerator right now, but I could use some shrimp.
Like I said, I'm taking over in that way just because I think I see so many great people doing grassroots work, doing important work. And I started Teen Sharp in the basement of our church. We moved to Rutgers Camden, but we didn't have real money to do anything until like 5 years later. So I know the kind of effort that it takes to do this, and I know the value that it provides. So I would encourage your viewers and others, monthly subscriptions, whatever it is, right? Sign up, put your cash tag, put your Venmo, put your Zelle, put your PayPal, whatever in the comments every week, and let's kind of help this grow.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate that, and thank you to the viewers. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing, for the comments. Oh, look at that. Tatiana hooked you up with the link. Thanks, Tatiana. Tatiana, just keep doing what you're doing. Wonderful person, wonderful mother, wonderful wife, wonderful partner in the work. Keep doing what you're doing, sis. Atnreakn, thank you for this interview. It was great. I think this interview will circulate in the education community, I'm sure. I know. I'm sure the leadership of Uncommon, Mastery, KIT, the district, they're going to watch this. So I hope you enjoyed something that you hear here, and it's something that motivates you to do better. Same thing with the union. Y'all need to watch this too. Thank you for the people in the comments and all that. With that, Ira, you got me tearing up over this, so I got to go before I start embarrassing myself.
Call me later. Great. Have a good
all right. Take care. And everyone else for watching, have a great day. I'm going to end it right here. Take care. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Ira, you can stay there for a second.